everyone. Welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. Month 6 of quarantine. Let's not get into it. Let's just get to the episode. I don't think anyone wants to rehash the void we are living in. I love this episode. This is great. This is Brian Gallivan. If you don't know who Brian is, let me read you his bio very quickly. Originally from the Boston area, TV writer Brian Gallivan was a middle school language arts teacher before taking a risk to perform and write for a living. Starting first with Boston's Improv Asylum, and then, after moving to Chicago, with Second City. Since moving to Los Angeles, Brian has written for a number of shows, including Happy Endings, Future Man, Splitting Up Together, and he created the short-lived series The McCarthys. I saw Brian do comedy. We talked about it a little bit in this episode. I saw him do comedy. I was like, oh, that guy's really funny. And then he and Naomi started working on a project together, which I don't think I can say anything about. But and I got to know him a little bit through that, and he's such a funny, nice guy. And I thought interesting because, you know, he also got a late start doing this, and so I guess narcissistically, I would say I have an interest in people who got a late start doing this. We talk a little bit about it, but I'm always jealous of the people who knew what they wanted to do with their lives early on. So we talk a lot about that and kind of about the repressions and denials in life and some other stuff. I won't say anything more because you will hear us say the words in about 45 seconds. But I will say this, if this is your first time listening to Beginnings, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you would like to check out other episodes, I've been doing the show for over a decade. They should all be there on Spotify, I think, or you can download the MP3s at beginnings.libsyn.com. And if you are here because you want to hear interviews with TV writers, why I've talked to tons of people, including Damon Lindelof, Jane Espenson, Allison Tatlock, who writes on Better Call Saul, Amy Annie Obi, Cord Jefferson from Watchmen and The Good Place, Jessica Gao, who wrote on Rick and Morty and Corporate and a bunch of other stuff. So check out all those episodes, and if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the show. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, plenty of other places. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter at Andy Beckerman. And I think that's about it. I got some great episodes coming up, including Owen Pallett from Arcade Fire and Final Fantasy, Silas Howard, who is a wonderful director, directed a lot of episodes of Pose and a bunch of other great TV shows, Steve Conrad, who created the show Patriot on Amazon, which is one of my favorites, Cy Spurrier. And I got a lot of great stuff. Cy Spurrier, who's one of my favorite comics writers, and rapper Psalm 1. I just talked to her, and she's awesome. So stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk to Brian. I thought this is kind of serendipitous because I had wanted to talk to you before Naomi and you were even working together. Oh, because nice. I don't know if she told you this, but when we were writing up the pitch, when we were going out to pitch our show last year, someone, either her manager or one of our agents or someone, sent us your pitch talk for one of your shows as an example of here's what's good. And I read it and I thought it was really funny. And then I saw you in a show and I'm like, oh, that's that guy.
That's nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you okay? So I just complimented you. I don't know. Do you take compliments well? I don't know. I'm saying this by way of I don't know how to process compliments. They come into my body. It creates a strange energy in me. And it just makes me actually anxious if I think about it.
Yeah, I love compliments, but I do not handle them well.
Yeah.
And I think David Sedaris, there was some short story he had, or maybe I heard him tell this on the radio, where someone he was a super fan of, he had to go up and tell them, like, I'm a super fan. You've brought me so much joy. And whoever it was so uncomfortable, but he just had to. So when his fans do it to him, he's like, I have to let them do this. What I'm saying is you must be a super fan of mine. So I'm going to let you say it.
Well, I used to, like, when I first started doing, I guess, improv at UCB, and if I did a show and I was terrible, I would go sulk forever. But if I was good, I would, and someone said I was good, I would be like, oh, you're crazy. Like, I'd be like, no. And then I remember reading something where someone just like, take the compliment. They weren't talking to me, but they were talking about this kind of stuff. And they were like, just take the compliment. Like, but I still like, so I store it now. Like I take it in, I smile, or I have like a pat, like, oh, you're so kind, or that's so nice of you to say, like a pat response. Cause I don't know, like, to me, I think this is connected into like my feelings about capitalism. Not to look, this is just my own musings about it, but like, in capital, raised in the kind of like, uber capitalist society, you don't get anything for free. Everything is commodified and everything is transactional. And so anything that isn't transactional, like just saying, even though I do this to other people, I see someone in a show and I'm like, oh my God, you were great. You were so funny. You killed it. That to me does, like, I don't need them to say anything back to me. But when someone says it to me, I feel now I owe them something.
Right. You're like, I love your sweater. Like you're immediately, you have to give them something.
Yeah, it has to be. I have to render this into a transactional relationship because my brain doesn't know how to have any other kind of relationship.
Right. Yeah. I get that. I also, I feel like it was hard for me to even learn, like when I was in a very bad show, or I personally was very bad in a show, and someone said, great job, I would be like, it wasn't. And I would explain to them in detail. And then I went to some friend's show that was bad. And I said, oh, great show. Like, whatever. I'm not one of those people who are like, I can't say it if I don't mean it. Like, I think those people are really bad.
Yeah. You look like you're having fun up there.
Yeah. Just say good job.
Yeah.
For getting up there. But anyway, this guy just went, oh, thanks so much for coming out. Like, I was like, oh, he handled that so graciously and didn't give me all the reasons his show was bad, which I tend to do. So I'm going to try to be more like him. Like, thanks so much for coming out.
It takes work because I just don't know. I don't know how to function if I don't know how to function in a stranger type relationship. If it's a friend, this is the thing. If it's a friend, they can do something nice for me and I can say thank you. And that's fine because there's these bonds of friendship already there. And those bonds, the compliments can zip line down the bonds of friendship in a way that when it's just a stranger saying something to you, there are no bonds there already. And so I think my mental spelunkers are throwing the grappling hooks of transactionality into their hearts.
Right. You should just say, what do you want? What do you want from me?
So just become Marin.
Yeah.
What do you expect from me? I gave you everything I had up on stage, and now you want more?
Oh, he just lost his romantic partner.
Well, oh, sure. I'm not. This is Marin years ago, by the way.
Oh, right. No, not at a. No, I'm not gonna.
So wait, how did this? Oh, yes, I was complimenting you. That's how this started. This is like,
yes.
I found this whole thing serendipitous. I found this that you and Naomi are working together.
Yeah,
because I had already in my head kind of marked down. You just you meet people and you're like, oh, I bet that person's interesting, or like they're funny. Well, there's no. By the way, coming out here, I've realized there's no necessity. There's no necessity in being like good at what you do and your background necessarily. Although I tend to talk. Well, you would think that like if someone was like a good comedian, actor, etc., that means that they have that they are an interesting person. Period.
And funny in real life.
Yeah. And I found, especially with writers, it's really like It's blown me away how like you can be a writer and have had no writing experience. You can be a writer and just like have had like you'd not be a funny person. Like when I'm like, oh, well, when you pitch on something, you have to be funny, right?
Well, yeah, I think I coached a lot of improv when I first moved to LA to make money. And they would be like, oh, so-and-so is going to be late because they write for a hilarious comedy show that everyone knows of. And I'd be like, they do? That person?
That person writes for Becker?
So, yeah. Matt Weiner wrote for Becker, leads to Mad Men and Mad Women. Yeah, so then I that actually inspired me. I was like, oh, okay. So it's not like you need a magic amount of talent to do this. There's sort of a like, you have to just work hard and keep trying and try to get in there. I mean, you need some talent, but
yeah. Well, yes. I mean, this is the thing. I think your social bonds or your friendships or who owes you for what, if you have enough of that, the talent can be minimal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've never heard of this transactional. I guess I don't like owing anyone anything.
Yeah, me too.
But I like to do things for people. But then they they get freaked out because they're like, "Why are you doing that?" That's
like
sometimes
like friends or
if
strangers.
If you do something generous, even friends. If you're like, "Oh, I just want to do this to be nice," people are like, "That's too much," or "That's too generous," or
really. Do you find that out here, or you mean in general? Because you've lived, you're from outside Boston.
Yeah.
And you then lived in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
So, because like to me, there's like a particular sociopathy of this city that I didn't find even in New York.
Really? Do tell.
I think there's like something like everything is the business out here, and in that sense, everything gets filtered through that. And I found even like I found people who I thought were friends were really just like, oh, I had sold a show, so they were waiting to see if it was gonna get staffed or something. Yeah. Or or just like, I mean, I don't think there was anyone that's like specifically been like that, but like, but where like after like a while, I'm like, oh wait, this isn't an actual friendship. This is just like, you think I may be able to do something for you in the future, so I'm just like in your deck of cards.
That's not nice.
But I didn't feel that in anywhere else I've lived.
Right. Yeah, maybe if it's people we know who are performers or writers, when they get here, it's like, okay, I'm doing this for real. And that things get a little intense.
Yeah.
I don't find everyone does that. There are definitely some people who do that for sure.
It's like, it's the thirst trap of cities, Los Angeles.
Yeah. Yeah.
So wait, okay, but you're from right outside Boston, right?
Yes, Dedham, Massachusetts.
Dedham.
Sounds like denim, but it's Dedham.
What kind of... So it's like basically a suburb?
Yeah, it borders Boston. So it's right up on the edge of Boston. But yeah, suburb. But you can get to Boston, like downtown Boston, on the commuter rail in like 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. So it's essentially Boston. It's essentially like you're there.
But people from Boston would be like, no, it's not. You're from Dedham. Accept it.
Oh, that's like someone who grows up in Westchester and says they're from New York. And they're like, no, you're not. You're from Westchester.
Yeah. My boyfriend and I were at a gay bar in November, back in the before times. And we were talking to three guys. I knew one of them. And we were asking, like, oh, where are you from? Where are you from? And one of the three gay guys said, New York. And his two friends both immediately went, upstate. Like, they couldn't let him trick us into thinking he was from Manhattan.
Well, there is because people use it as, like, social cachet, right? Yeah. They're like, oh, I'm from the big city. And they're like, no, you grew up in Monroe.
Right.
So when you were growing up there, I think we're about the same age. So you are a child of the 80s, basically, right?
I was a teen of the 80s.
You were a teen of the 80s.
So I might be a bit older than
A
you.
little. So, like, you could have gone and seen the Pixies, maybe, if you wanted to.
I could have, but I didn't. I discovered them, like, too late, but I could have.
What is Dedham like at that point? You know, or what is Boston? If Dedham is basically like a suburb and therefore a sterile environment, you know, what is the Boston of your youth like?
The good news about Dedham is it wasn't like sterile suburb. It was like had a little grit from being so close to Boston. Strong Boston accents, which are fun, which I didn't really notice growing up. But they were there. And mine comes out when I'm drinking a bit. Yeah, it was very like sports town. Very, yeah, I'm one of 6 kids. So like my family was very into like basketball and sports. And I wasn't great at sports. So I did track and stuff. But it was just sort of a town where like you go to school, you have your friends, you might drink under a bridge on the weekends in high school.
Is that what you might do?
You might do that, yeah. Yeah, so I was like in honors classes, but I would drink beer on the weekends with my friends because I'm a bad boy.
Is that okay? So like, I'm from Pennsylvania, and to sports, like I think a lot about like how much of your personality or how much of who you are comes out of like your body shape. Like I have no control over the fact that I was always short.
Okay.
And while I like basketball, I like playing football with my friends, but like I was not great. I was fine. I could, be in a game with them. But like if we're playing football, especially tackle football, and someone throws it to me, I better either evade them because the minute they get anywhere close to me, I'm getting slammed on the ground.
Right.
So, I think that I naturally gravitated, even though I enjoyed playing with my friends, I think I naturally gravitated towards other activities.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm 6'5" now, but it like started growing freshman year of high school. And in a way it was almost like, because I was gay, if a girl liked me in high school, that was sort of stressful at times. Like, oh God, she likes me. People are going to expect me to want to date her because she's, cute and fun and whatever.
Yeah.
That's how all the boys talked about the girls. She's cute and fun. No, that's just how I talked about them. They would, that's how being tall also felt like, oh, you've got potential to play basketball, but then I'd be terrible at it. So, I had the height perhaps you wanted, but it wasn't serving me well.
Mm-hmm. But you had expectations. This is what I think about. I'm like, so you had this kind of like, you were the body shape for someone who would play basketball, but you also, and then that automatically puts expectations on you.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't feel those from the inside.
No, just from right outside my body.
And I think that's an interesting equilibrium because, like, I don't know. I think about people a lot as vectors. Mm-hmm. I think of like certain things pushing them and pulling them or in certain directions. Right. Yeah. And if they push you, if the external vectors are enough to shove you in a certain pathway, you might never get off that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your internal vectors, let's say like the ones pushing from the inside are not like, you're like, oh, I don't like basketball, or I'm not. I mean, you were tall enough. Could you have, if you wanted to, could you have like dedicated yourself to becoming good?
Yeah, I could have. It would have taken. I could have blocked some shots. I would have been okay at that. But just literally, even just gently putting it off the backboard into the net, like I couldn't do that sometimes. And you're so close when you're tall to the net. So yeah, I could have. And I think there were times in my life where I'm like, I better dedicate myself to this because it'll make me seem straight or whatever when I was young. And then I realized like, oh, that's not going to to work. And so I'm not great at vectors, but there are other things pushing me like from within towards like theater and writing and whatever. And I
What was it about? What was it about that stuff that was pushed in that direction? Like, how did that make you feel inside?
Like I loved it. But I was like, this seems a little gay. Too much of my early life was spent trying to avoid appearing gay. So I would avoid things that I enjoyed and pursue things I didn't enjoy to like, not all the time, thankfully, but because the drive for the arts was too strong within me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But so there was a lot of camouflaging going on.
Attempts. Yeah.
I mean,
attempts.
I have not heard a lot of good things about Boston in general in terms of tolerance, and I assume Boston in the 80s was not the paragon of tolerance.
Yeah, it doesn't have a great reputation for sure. I mean, I know so many people from there who are tolerant, but like my dad taught at a high school in Boston during busing when segregation was going on, and or they were trying to, desegregate, and yeah, it didn't go great for Boston for sure. There were some people fighting against tolerance.
I mean, I ask this sometimes, like if all the cultural signifiers are like saying, like, how do you come to even understand your sexuality when all the cultural signifiers, when you're in such like a like very hetero signifying culture or city specifically?
Mm-hmm. How do I say it again? Sorry,
how does it even like become a notion? Because everything is telling you like you're supposed to like women. Like, how do you like cut through that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you just see a picture of some handsome guy and you're like, I like that. So, and you're like, and you fight that for a while and you're like, I could kiss a girl. That's fine. Yeah, it's just a biological drive.
Right.
That's strong enough. Yeah, that's it.
But that's what I mean. That's the thing specifically where it's just like, you're like, oh yeah, no, I could kiss a girl. And then it's just like, to me, it's those kind of like, whatever it is that culture is telling you to deny, whether it's sexuality or some other example I can't come up with right now off the top of my head, but like those kinds of things where I think those moments of like being able to break through that cultural crust. I have a lot of terrible metaphors today.
Loving that crust.
I think those have to be freeing moments in your life or moments of discovery that maybe like open up the door to other kinds of things. That's why I'm curious about them.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately I didn't like really break through that crust until I was like 24. So, but the minute I did, and I'm loving crust as a metaphor, just because I love like baked goods. And so picture me just sort of bursting through a pie. But the minute I did, I was like, oh, I wasted so much time. Like I was so worried about people thinking I was this or that. And I avoided it so hard. And then the minute I embraced it, I was like, this is great. What is my problem? And I don't just mean like sex. I mean like just dating or like liking someone who likes you back in the way that feels right for you. And you're like, I could have done this so much sooner.
Right. Like I think, because this is why I'm curious about this stuff, because I'm like, in terms of like being a creative person, right? If you are denying a facet of yourself, you are a lot of energy goes to that denial. Yeah, that could be going towards being a creative person.
Yeah,
right. And also you're not accessing your full who you are fully when you are creating then. And so it puts a what is that, a starter cap? Like on a is that what it's called? On a car when it's to stop it from going above a certain speed. I think it's called a starter cap. There's something.
Puts blanks in your gun.
Yeah.
Your creative gun.
Yeah, I like that metaphor better.
I'm making that one up. Yeah, it definitely, and I feel like I got a late start creatively as well. Like partially because I was dealing with the other stuff, but not that stopped other younger gay men. There are many famous examples of gay men creating. But I was 30 when I took my first improv class, and I was 42 when I got my first staff writing job. And partially, like, I had to come out to my family as an improv person a few years after coming out as gay. And they were like, I don't know. The improv thing almost seemed stranger to them until they saw it. And then they were like, oh, this is fun.
Oh, I get yes-anding now.
Yeah.
So there, like, because that, I mean, this is, my story is such a pale sliver version of that. No. But it's basically, why I'm curious about a lot of these things is because it's kind of like the same journey I went through, right? Where like, but it was more of like my parents' expectations. I could never be honest about what I wanted or that I could do anything. So like I didn't take improv until I was maybe 29, somewhere around there. I didn't start writing. I mean, it's always been in fits and starts, like, because we didn't move out here until late. But like, you know, I was like 33 when I got like my first job, and then, you know, I still haven't gotten like the thing I want to be doing, which is writing on a sitcom. I still haven't gotten like a real like staff writing job on that yet.
42. That's the year to get it. That's what I say.
All right, so I got like a year and a half left.
Then you don't have to sustain as long.
Well, it is interesting coming out here. Like, I realized there's almost no one that I've talked to where they've talked about their job and haven't just said, hey, a gig's a gig. Almost no one. There's like a handful of people who have like these like magical jobs. But like everyone I talk to at some, like when I'm like, oh, that sounds great. Like that show sounds so fun. And there's like, yeah, you know, gig's a gig.
And some of the people who say that, though, are actually working on things that I would love to work on. Like, I think everyone in their head when they got into this was like, I will write for Saturday Night Live or Veep, or like they just have these ideals in their heads of the type of thing they will write for. And so then when it's not that, they almost feel the pressure to belittle it, even though it's a good thing. Like, they're writing for something that I'm like, that's so impressive. And they're like, a gig's a gig. And you're like, no, that's a really good gig.
Well, the minute we moved out, the minute this went from like a hobby to a career, I think I shifted what I wanted to do. And it's just like, oh no, I'll write on a sitcom called The Shittersons. Like I don't care anymore. This is a job now. And this is about, you know, providing when I can. And also like, of course I would love to write for Veep 2 or whatever, but there is a certain thing where I'm just like, I just want to write jokes. I don't want to, you know, photocopy, memos.
Yeah.
But like, so like coming to this late, you know, I mean, what was the process in your mind of being like, this is what I want to do for a living, and I'm going to pursue this?
Well, I was a middle school teacher in both Boston and a suburb of Boston for like 5.5 years. And I started taking improv classes maybe like 3 years into that gig of teaching, and was so excited to have a hobby or a passion that I could pursue on the weekends. And then I started performing at this theater in Boston called Improv Asylum in the North End, which was great. And I made a little bit of money performing, and I do shows on Thursday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, rehearsal on Tuesday nights, and I was teaching full time, and I was just so happy. But then I was eventually got tenure as a middle school teacher, which sounds fancy. It just yay teachers union, which allowed me to take a year leave of absence. So then I really committed to working at this theater, Improv Asylum, and also like auditioning for commercials in Boston and writing more. And I tutored still to make money, but then I extended that for one more year and was like, maybe. And then I decided to move to Chicago to try and pursue working at Second City. And so it was a gradual sort of, I'm going to get more and more serious about this. And the leave of absence was a nice thing to have because I could go back to teaching if I really tanked. But then when I really got serious about it, as I had failures, more so in Los Angeles, I had a great time in Chicago and a lot of luck and fun there. But when I moved to LA, it seemed like a big puzzle I couldn't solve. But I also knew I do not want to go back to being a teacher. So I'm just going to keep throwing shit at the wall until something sticks out here.
But you had a safety net at first. You had that. Because, I mean, also, what class did you grow up as?
My dad was a teacher, so like middle class, I guess. But he was a public school teacher. Is that middle class?
I mean, with 6 kids?
Yeah, lower middle class.
If you didn't have any family wealth, then yes, I would say middle class. Like if your grandparent wasn't like a magnate.
No, he was a bus driver in Boston, immigrant from Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is what's fascinating to me. Then it's like you didn't have anything to fall back on. You had that sabbatical. You could go back to teaching, right? But there wasn't anything
for a while. But then I gave that up when I moved to Chicago.
I mean, what do you know what it was in your head? Like, I'm going to take this chance, or like, there are some people, like, I say this because like there are some people who are like, oh, it's not worth it to me. I'm not going, like, the possibility of succeeding, right, is not worth. Is not worth the I could have to start over again somewhere in some other, like, I could go back to teaching maybe, but it's just not worth it. You did take that chance, right?
Right. Well, first of all, the thing I did have to fall back on is I have both the privilege of being a tall white man in America, so that helps. But I'm the 5th of 6 children. And my dad made the oldest 2 children in our family go into business because he was like, don't be a teacher. The money is not great. And so they both went into business. So I knew I could borrow money from the business siblings. So I have that privilege that I did. I borrowed some money in LA when I lived here and in Chicago, and eventually was able to pay it back and feel good about that. But I did have that safety net that a lot of people don't have. Yeah. But I do think the gay thing gave me some courage, whether I realized it or not. Like, I took a big chance, came out. Nobody I was close to reacted really poorly. And so I did a thing where, like, in a moment, your life could switch and suddenly people could be like, we hate you now. And they didn't say that, and it, went pretty well overall, the coming out. So I think that has made me take a few other risks. Like, I was like, oh, I wasn't that as happy as I could be, and I did something. So when I was a middle school teacher, I had a teaching partner. We shared like a group of kids, and they would go back and forth between our classes. Like, she taught math and science, I taught English and history. Yeah. And we were just chatting after school one day, and she said, we're talking about our vice principal, who was an older man. And she said, oh, I could see you being vice principal someday. And I immediately said, fuck you. Like, just immediately had a visceral reaction to that. And I was like, sorry. I don't know why that came out, but clearly I don't want to pursue this and stay here. Like, a part of me knew that. Yeah.
But you also, I think what's interesting, in that moment, you knew to listen to yourself. There were so many moments in my past where there were things like that, or like just dumb things, I would say. Like when I was in grad school, I was talking to my friends once, and I talked about how, like, oh, my PhD is just going to be like a safety net for me when I go to New York to pursue comedy, which is the dumbest fucking thing in the world, right? Yeah. And like, only in retrospect was I like, you should have just gone earlier to do the thing you wanted to do.
Wait, you had a PhD, or your friends would say that?
I said I was in grad school. I was in a PhD program.
Oh, really?
For philosophy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I essentially got kicked out because I wasn't doing this. I was doing what I wanted to do. And like, here's an example. There was an election for the grad students to be a liaison to the faculty. All right, and what has happened is you would go to if you got elected, you would go to all the faculty meetings and just represent all the grad students. Be like, hey, that's nice that you guys are doing that, but we think you should be doing X, or you just listen and then you come back and report back, right? And I'm like, oh, that sounds like something cool. I want to run for that. And it was me versus my friend Danielle. And Danielle was extremely studious. She was like, she had won some awards already. She had, she was working towards, like, she was writing her own kind of like philosophy of tourism. She was like working on her own like little subsection of philosophy. And I made a video where I green screened myself and was attacked by bees in the video, and was trying to tell people to vote for me when I was being attacked by bees. So you tell me if I should have been in grad school for philosophy.
Oh my God.
But this is the thing. I wasn't honest with myself at there. I didn't even, in that moment where I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? Why am I making this instead of like working on my own, like scholarship, right? It did not occur to me. I was not self-aware in the way that you were self-aware.
Well, yeah, I also went to grad school before I became a teacher, like a master's in English literature program that when I started was like, I'll do this, I'll get a PhD, I'll become a professor. And then week one, I was like, oh no, I'll get through the master's. But, and I feel like it was me trying to find like a respectable way to be creative. Like,
yeah,
this is dealing with reading and writing. I'd like this rather than like actually writing the type of things. But part of it is I hadn't seen anyone I knew do that.
Right. That's what I think is so fascinating, because you move out here and you're like, oh, well, everyone came from my background, right? You went and you did comedy, and you're like, well, what's the next thing to do? And then you move out here. And it's like, no, like, people move, it's a fun way to be wealthy. That's what I found for a lot of people. And so there's no, like, there are some people you see, not to throw another compliment at you, but like you see where there's like there's something more in the stuff that they're making, or that, to them, to their humor, than just like, it was better than going into politics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm saying yeah to lots of things you just said, but I don't know exactly what. But I think there's a breed of comedian that's just sort of like, they figured it out early and went right to it. And I'm both jealous of that and also grateful that I took a weird winding route to get here. But I don't know.
But like, do you think you were self-aware before you came out, before you were like, because I only asked that because you said that was this moment of like, I recognize these things in myself, and I told them to other people, and there were no one reacted really badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've set up this whole thing like, oh, you can't do this because your life will be bad and everyone will hate you. And then you discover, oh, that wasn't true. actually. But then I'm like, oh, so career-wise, I'll be a middle school teacher, which I'm pretty sure I'll hate, but maybe I'll like it. Just because it seemed like I had to do it with many parts of my life. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I'm just trying to ask if like the like if there was a kind of like, if that opened you up to be like, were you repressing or was it denial that this is what you wanted to do for a living?
Well, I certainly knew it brought me joy. Like even being in middle school, I did plays and musicals and I loved it. But then in high school, it felt too dangerous, like to be in theater because it's too gay. But then senior year, there's our high school did a musical and everyone did it. Everyone, even the football players and the cool kids. And so I was allowed to do that. And it brought me so much joy. It was crazy. But then I wasn't like, I should do more of that. I would then wait another 3 years and in college take one acting class and love it so, so, so much. And then be like, well, I can't do that for real. But then I'd like audition for an improv group I'd read about in the Boston Phoenix, which was like the alternative newspaper. And I would know nothing about improv, had taken 0 classes, but I'd be like, oh, I've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway on Comedy Central. I think I might like this. And then I'd go and say no to things people were saying in the scene to me, which you're not supposed to do in improv. So they'd be like, he doesn't know how to improvise. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm bad at that. And then eventually I turned 30 and was like, what's something I really want to do to like celebrate this momentous birthday? And was like, maybe I should take the classes in improv. So yeah, there were a lot of weeds and, listeners, I'm making hand motions that make this very clear. Thickets, what do you say when you're trying to like get through the weeds?
Yeah. I'm imagining you in more of like a cornfield, but yeah.
Yes. Just trying to get to the thing you like. And it shouldn't be that hard, but you've built up all these walls and reasons why not in your head.
mean, look, I have my own little stalking horses. I guess, is that the phrase? But like where I do think class is a huge factor in a lot of this stuff. Right. In where like if you don't have money to fall back on, you have to make a living, right? You don't get like,
yes,
like you don't get to do this kind of stuff at an early age, I think, unless you come from money or happen to like go to the right school or something like that.
Yeah. Even like if I had studied hard and gotten into Harvard, which I didn't study hard, so I didn't even apply to Harvard. But if I had gone there, there would be people there who would say, this is how you write for television. These are the steps you take.
Yeah.
But I went to Holy Cross, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts. Anthony Fauci went there. No big deal. Usually Clarence Thomas also went there. So
I would maybe cut off the alumni, your list of alumni before.
Well, for years it was like Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas and I both studied self-hatred at Holy Cross. But I remember telling a career counselor there, they're like, what are you interested in? And I was like, I'm really interested in entertainment. Like, I love seeing what TV shows become popular, what songs become popular, what movies. I follow like the charts and the box office and the Billboard chart. And he looked at me for a long time like I was insane and then said, what about advertising? And I was like, sure, okay.
Yeah. Or like, oh, maybe you could watch more TV then. Maybe that's something you could do with your evenings.
Yeah.
While you are working in the salt mines.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm also curious about like your family growing up. You're like one of 6 children. Mm-hmm. What is the dynamic in your household? Is there, or maybe this is a better way, is there like a good story that you have that like typifies what that dynamic was in your household?
Well, I mean, there were 6 kids, and so everybody wanted to be funny. My dad was funny. My mom's funny too, but she's always like, I'm not funny, but she's quite funny. But I think he liked to joke around, and not like tell jokes, but just sort of, play off what you said and
Yeah.
Very good training for improv. But, in a big family, you're probably fighting for attention. So if you were funny, you got attention not just from my parents, but from like older siblings and I was like a nerdy little gay kid with an eye patch because I had a lazy eye.
Hold on. Should have led with that part.
Yeah. And my glasses were very similar to the kind Malcolm X had. Just a coincidence. But so I was a quirky little kid. So my family, making them laugh, I was like, oh, this is good. This helps. So they weren't like, sit down and write your spec script, Brian. But they were like, oh, be funny. You're weird, but you're funny. So we like that.
Yeah. They weren't like, hey, Brian, pitch us an episode of Cheers.
Right. Which we would all watch together, all 8 of us in one room every Thursday.
So you had an eye patch.
Yeah.
How long did you have an eye patch for?
A few years. When I was about one of my aunts said to my mom, like, his eye is like way over there. Like my mom was so tired and she was like, oh, really? Oh God. Okay. All right. We'll take him to the doctor. Yep. So then I wore a patch on my good eye so the bad eye would work harder and not be lazy. It is funny. I'm always dealing with like the little, oh God, sorry everyone. We're now mid therapy session, but my therapist once said to me, sorry, like your diagnosis isn't that interesting. You were gay and everyone said that was wrong. So you tried to be perfect in every other way. Yeah. So anyway, that's why you're hard on yourself and you want to be perfect. It's funny that my eye was labeled as lazy when I was like 2 or 3. It's like part of you isn't working right. We've got to fix it, I don't know. So I forget your question. I got a lazy ear too. Forgot your question.
Wait, was your therapist saying that, by the way, just to like, let's get to the good stuff?
I think he was like, it's not like everyone has a big Robin Williams, Matt Damon moment in Good Will Hunting where the therapist is like hugging them while they cry and they're like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's like, a lot of gay guys have the same issues. And he's gay. So I think he was like, he wasn't unkind when he said it.
Right. It's just funny to me that we're like I try to have these like very strict boundaries with my therapist where, and I mean, I even have like a weird therapist out here who her boundaries are so strong that she like, if you ask her how she's doing, she won't even answer you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's very like, I know almost nothing about her.
Oh, yeah.
One time when we started doing, when quarantine started and we had to start doing these over Skype, I had to look her name up. And that's the first time I found out her last name.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
That's how, so it's weird to me to have like a therapist, like our couples therapist is a little more in our life.
Okay.
And so but like in terms of like personal therapy, I'm like, nope, you're a doctor. You're here to tell me like you have to be totally flavorless as a human being.
Oh, really?
In some way.
Oh, okay. I've had like 3 therapists. They've all been gay men. And there's been a range. The one I go to now, I've gone to like for 7 or 8 years, and I think he's great. And one of them, though, out here in LA, was like, I would complain about like, I'm not finding work, and he'd be like, well, no one's working. It's really slow right now. And I was like, the business? Like he would just talk about the biz, like it was.
Oh, see, that's my hell. See, that's the thing. That is what our problem is with moving out here. Where like your therapist is just like, I was reading Deadline this morning. So like, only one person has sold something, or just like, like I can't read. I can't go on Twitter now and see someone like post like a Deadline article, like specifically in the last 2 months, without my brain going, why haven't you sold a show in quarantine?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, Deadline is one of the biggest causes of pain in Los Angeles. I've heard people be like, "Oh, I just don't read it anymore," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I've tried that, but it's interesting." I told my college career counselor I'm interested in the entertainment business, so it's like, even if I were a teacher, I'd want to be reading about like what's going on in the biz.
Yeah, you would have a subscription to EW.
Yeah. Oh, I have since '96.
Have you read the latest issue where Naomi and I are mentioned?
Yeah. Wait, the one with all the gay people on the cover?
Yeah.
Where is it? What do they say?
There's like a quarantine article, and our other show, couples therapy, is mentioned.
Oh, all right. I do like one flip through where I like, and then I do a deep dive. So I got to do my deep dive. That's great.
But like, so this is something. This has been like an E-Day fix for you since you were young, right?
Say it again. An E-Day?
E-Day fix, obsession.
Oh, I like that. Oh, E-Day fix. Is that French?
Yeah, it is.
I took French many times, so I should know. I should know that. Yeah. Yes, I would, as a nearly blind young boy, I would kneel right in front of the television because I couldn't see well. So there's like pictures of me with my like nose up against the TV. And I would think watching Sesame Street, like, I got to get in there. Maybe I'll get a hammer, break the TV, and then I'll be with the puppets from Sesame Street, which seems very sort of weirdly symbolic now. And especially when I first moved to LA, I also was like, how do I get in there?
Yeah.
It seems impossible.
Do you know what it was that resonated with you? Like when you were a child?
I don't know. I don't know why I liked like stories like that. I liked books and I liked people reading to me, but I loved TV. I would watch like Sesame Street, Electric Company, Mr. Rogers. Mm-hmm. And then one of my aunts brought me and one of my cousins to like an outdoor play of The Wizard of Oz in a park in my hometown when I was like 4 or 5, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is amazing. Like, just had a visceral reaction to it. Like, I gotta do this. This is great.
Okay, so it was, I mean, it's not even like, it doesn't even start in your head. It's like bodily. It is like, it really was like something that goes, it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like primal, I think.
Yeah.
Is the word I'm looking for.
Similar to the gay thing. Like on Mr. Rogers, sometimes they would go to a theater and do like puppet shows with marionettes. It was like once a year or something. And I live for that. Because there was something about like putting on a show, or like the old Muppets TV show when it was like behind the scenes. Like I just was like, this is great. And then in middle school, they did a TV show of Fame, the movie. Mm-hmm. And it was about, the performing arts high school. And it came out when I was doing a play in middle school. And I was like, I am living this life. Yes. Like I was so excited. And then yet get to 9th grade and I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like just both things that were primal for me, being gay and theater, I had to bury both because they seemed too connected. Again, I'll ask this question about it at that time. Was it denial or was it repression? Were you pushing it to, like, because I think the difference is like, were you cut off or cauterize that kind of part of you? That's like denial to me. And then repression is you push it down somehow, but then that energy comes out anyway in a different way. Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I can't, because I don't know. What do you think?
I've had to, like, I always called myself repressed, but my therapist lately has been like, no, you just were denying that part of yourself. And because I think the difference is in denying that it deadened my emotions in some way.
Oh,
and
okay.
only when I finally accepted that or stopped denying that thing was I able to become kind of like a more full person or like allow my emotions to come out. That's, I mean, not to like wrap this, like go back to the beginning, but like the part of the reason I have problem accepting compliments is because like for most of my life, I accepted compliments when I was in this kind of like deadened emotional state.
Right. Yeah.
And so like I never learned how to process that kind of stuff. And so then only now I have to be like, oh, okay, I have to learn how to take in, or even joy. I don't know how to process. If like something joyful happens, it really like fucks me up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, based on that definition, I'll say that the gay thing was probably repression for a while at least, but the improv, acting, writing, creative stuff when I was a middle school teacher was denial because I felt like depressed. I felt like I would leave school and just get a bunch of fast food and go home and be like, I'm failing every day. I'm not doing a good job at this. I don't like this. Like, that was sadder. Fun.
No. It is. What about like your repression? How did that energy come out? Like, how did it transform?
I just ran. I think I ran, and you're in high school and college, so you drink. But it's weird. Like I ran track all through college too. It wasn't like I wasn't like on a scholarship Division I team or anything. It was more like sign up and you're on the track team. And I think I did it just to like maybe get energy out. I wasn't really like thinking it through. It was just like, well, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I hated it. Like I actually I didn't mind the like running every day. That was that gives you endorphins and whatnot. But the meets and the competition were so stressful for me. Whereas like improv, people are like, don't you get nervous? Almost never. Like maybe early on, but it's like, oh no, because this is something I love. And I've put, I put my 10,000 hours into running, but it was like maybe half of those hours brought me great joy. But I'm like, what am I doing?
I find this stuff so fascinating. Like, what is it? What, like, before you fully become who you are, what are all these? Because sometimes it's not always denial or repression. Sometimes you are like, it is just experimentation. Where like you don't know what you are, who you are as a person. So you're just trying on all these different kinds of things. Some people, the running track would have been just like, yeah, I thought I'd try it. As opposed to like for you, it was a way of channeling this energy that could, like this truth about yourself that couldn't come out any other way.
Yeah. And I sort of joke about that now, but it's possibly what I was doing.
Did you how did you, besides humor, like, did you have an emotional family growing up?
We loving family who never said I love you. Does that make sense?
Well, it's, Catholic, ?
Yes.
Okay.
Irish Catholic. And my family, I've discovered as I get older, like, I come from a very stable, loving family. Like, hearing other people's stories or, like, things they've gone through with their parents. My parents, I knew they loved me. We didn't say it all the time, but I knew they were there for me. And I just hear some horror stories from people of things they've gone through. And I'm like, oh my God, I was so lucky to have that.
Yeah. Like how Catholic? Like Catholic in...
Church every week.
Was it something like... I ask this sometimes on the show, but is it like... Was it deeper? Was it like, we're going to follow the rules because that's what we're supposed to do? Or was it like... Was there a deeper faith in your family? Did you feel that too? Or was it just something you had to do?
I think it was something I had to do. I definitely took on the messages of the Catholic Church that were like, be kind, help other. Like I would take on and when I taught at a Catholic school, that was my first teaching job. and I had to teach religion. And at that point, I did not have faith anymore, we'll say. But I was like, had to teach the 10 Commandments to these middle school kids, some of them who were like wild girls, who were like 8th grade girls who were on birth control already. And, you know, I would see working at a store 2 years later and they would be 6 months pregnant or whatever. Like they had a lot of challenges, these girls. But I also was like, oh, it's not bad to review some of these basic things with some of these kids. Like, don't steal, don't kill, don't. But then it would be like, don't covet your neighbor's wife. And I'd be like, well, whatever. Like, it's all such a mess. You know, I think religion has caused a lot of damage in the world for sure. Oh God, I just started rambling. Anyway,
No, it's
where
by
do
the
we
way,
start?
Well, I was just trying to figure out like whether it was like how much of it was a part of your childhood. But it is interesting. Like, what is the balance sheet for religion? Like when the end days, when Revelations finally comes true.
Right. Yeah. It actually hurt more than it helped. Or yeah. No, it's a whole thing. Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that.
Well, I mean, if it is, there are some people on the show where it like really is an important part of their lives, and it has structured them. Mm-hmm. For me, it's more of like an ethical thing, right?
Right.
I find that like Judaism has instilled a certain, very strong moral backbone, one in which I would say that most Jews don't follow. And I'm like, but we were taught to do this. Why are you not following this? Why are you
right? Yeah, it's an interesting mixture of like, we're this, and it's like, but then do this. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm talking about Catholics, and yeah.
I think there's similarities.
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And comedy-wise, you meet a lot of Jewish people and Catholic people in writers' rooms.
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't know. They breed good comedians, both religions.
Is there something I think that like the best art happens at contradictions, where contradictions are kept in some kind of equilibrium. So if they go too far, like you get like a crazy artist, you get like an outsider artist who can't actually, or someone who can't actually doesn't have the discipline.
Yeah.
Right. Or if there's not enough contradictions at all, you might have just someone who's disciplined but churns out just like prosaic kind of trash.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't have to be trash, just like boring bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if there's some kind of connection between religions that happen to contain a lot of contradictions within them, such as Judaism and Catholicism.
Yeah.
Versus like, you know, I doubt there's a lot of evangelical. I doubt there's a lot of like really good evangelical writers and artists. There might be a handful.
There might.
But like that to me, it's too far. Like it's not contradictory because you're brought up in this very like this worldview that's pretty cut and dry in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? All the show is a lot of like hypotheses and armchair musings.
Yeah, I think being Catholic, despite my disagreements with the Catholic Church currently, has definitely informed my sensibility and my comedy, and I'm drawn to someone who was raised Catholic. I'm like, oh, you were? Like, because they've gone through what you've gone through.
Yeah. Do you know, like, is there a specific example? Like, how do you think it, like, has structured the way you make things? Or even your sense of humor? Like, however you want to take that question, really.
Yeah, well, and maybe it's more being Irish and Catholic, but there's, like, a darkness. There's an ability to sort of laugh at dark things, which I think sometimes I push too far. Now I'm like, oh, let's go darker. And then people are like, we didn't want to go that dark. Like, or people I grew up with, as I got more and more into comedy, I would then see them after a long time and make jokes that they'd be like, what the hell? Like, that's very dark. Like, So,
do you feel strong connections with your Irish heritage?
I actually do, because strangely enough, I came out while living in Ireland. My older sister, who went into business, ended up being like a CPA for 10 years and then went to grad school at Trinity in Dublin, Ireland, for MBA, they call it, and the business people call it that. But she lived there for a while, and so before I went to grad school for English literature, she said, why don't you come over here and like wait tables or something? And so I did that for about 6 months and met my first boyfriend. He was the first person I ever came out to, had this lovely, international romance for my first gaying it up episode, and it was delightful. And so I have very fond memories of Ireland, and I've gone back a few times. And last summer, 24 members of my family, because my dad's parents were from there, and my older sister lived there on and off for a while. She became friends with my mom's cousin, who was a bachelor farmer who left her like a chunk of money when he died. And so she used that to bring our whole extended family, like all my siblings, all my nieces and nephews, my boyfriend. We all went for 2 weeks last summer. Thankfully, not this summer. I love Ireland, and I love like Irish literature. I like that there's like an Oscar Wilde, in one of the greatest Irish writers is a gay guy, and there's something about drinking and sadness, but joy. Like there's a nice mixture of that. There's also some, there's bad stuff too everywhere. But
sure, you're not a huge fan of setting off bombs in London,
right?
But I do think that it's interesting. If you have a strong connection to your heritage, right? It somehow the Geist, the whatever, that heritage does like show up in you in certain ways, and there is I wonder if it's like if I don't think this is answerable, but like I wonder if it's just that like you get drawn to this is your heritage, you're told it's your heritage, and then you get drawn to those certain aspects, like you recognize something in you, and then so you like follow those paths, or if later on you learn about it and you're like, that's me too. Oh yeah. They're like, yeah. Samuel Beckett is Irish. Oh well, I've written stories about lobsters.
I think it's. I think I don't know. I mean, I've lost faith in all my opinions, but I think because the Irish are known as storytellers who are darkly funny, and that was sort of respected and rewarded within my own family, possibly because both parents are Irish, and it's definitely supported my love of being funny and telling stories. But then I took it another step, like, but I'm also going to try and do that for a living, and everyone. Then they're like, whoa, that's insane. What are you doing? But then they're like, you did it. Good.
Brian, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. My brain hurts.
For real?
Yeah, in a good way.
We covered everything?
We did.
Okay. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.